Welcome to the MogollonMonster.com presentation on cryptozoology and science with a focus on Bigfoot. My name is Mitch Waite. I want to introduce myself. I am a cryptozoologist specializing in the Mogollon Monster, which is Arizona's Bigfoot. I am a retired Air Force major. I put in 20 years, 6 months, and 10 days in the service as a space officer for NORAD and U.S. Space Command. I hold a bachelor's degree in electronic engineering and technology and a master's degree in space systems management. In other words, how to launch things and manage things in space. I was born and raised here in Arizona. As a space officer, I was one of 5 officers in the military that was used to advise the general on staff on space threats. I had to have knowledge of capabilities of foreign, which is Russia, China, etc., domestic, which is the United States, Canada, and so forth, and extraterrestrial in nature. Yes, UFOs. Nothing went into or out of the Earth's atmosphere without me knowing about it. Yes, I know about uncorrelated targets, which is the professional words for UFOs. I know about aliens, and I know about known UFOs, or basically our stuff. But that's a different story, not to be told here. So what exactly is cryptozoology? Well, the word itself tells us a little bit. Crypto meaning hidden. Zoology is the study of animals. So basically we study creatures that are not yet proven to exist, such as Bigfoot, the South American chupacabra, and so forth. We also study creatures of myth, legend, and lore, which would be Methuselah, the Aswang, and the Beast of Dartmoor. We also study creatures out of place, like a penguin in the Arizona desert. And we study creatures thought to be extinct, but we keep finding animals that were supposed to be gone a long time ago, but they're still here. So, what exactly are the requirements to be a cryptozoologist? Well, the answer is absolutely none. There are no academic requirements for cryptozoology. There is no degree to earn in cryptozoology, and therefore it's considered to be a pseudoscience. So, if it's not required to be a cryptozoologist to have any school or any academic background, why does it need science? Cryptozoology is not a recognized field of science, but to be a successful cryptozoologist, you must understand that it uses multiple fields of science: biology, zoology, anthropology, archaeology, forensics, botany, and much, much more. So actually, cryptozoology has to use multiple sciences instead of one field of study. The creatures studied in cryptozoology are usually referred to as cryptids. Now, when we study cryptozoology, the methods and sciences used are pretty much standard across the board. So therefore we're just going to take a look at one of the top cryptids, which is Mr. Bigfoot. Now this particular picture is a picture that I took back in February of 2010. It's an actual photo. However, it's been altered just slightly. I removed a branch from the lower right lip and the upper left eyebrow and smoothed it out a little bit. So yes, the photo has been altered slightly, but this gives you a good idea of what the Mogollon Monster, or one of them, actually looks like. So, to overcome bias about the cryptids, you must do it scientifically, because our cryptids don't cooperate. They won't stand still long enough to get a photo of them, and we hardly know anything about them. So we have to do it based on science. And the reason for this is eyewitness accounts are basically not accepted as proof anymore. Footprints of the cryptid are not proof. Photos or video are not proof. So basically, we have to come up with a way to prove the animal exists and find out more out about them. So what exactly is necessary for proof of existence? So, many people believe that we need a body. This is an age-old contention that has been roaring back and forth between two camps in the Bigfoot community. You have the no harm, no kill folks, and then you have the ones that are out there that need to kill one in order to prove that the Bigfoot exists. And they may also be trying to claim glory or fame for doing so. So many believe that a body is the only accepted proof. Now, many have claimed to have shot Bigfoot, but I want to point one thing out. Nobody has ever come up with a body. There's been a few claims to have been so, but these bodies have usually turned out to be a suit or fur that's been stuffed with possum guts and either frozen or boxed in a box where you can't touch them or examine them. Nobody has actually come up with a real body. Killing one or several of a very rare species, is that acceptable? In my way of thinking, no, it's not. What if Bigfoot turns out to be a hybrid human? Well, let's kind of look at the case here. If Bigfoot was shot and you brought the body back, basically the first thing that's going to happen is you're not going to be allowed to keep it. It's going to be seized. Then law enforcement has to get involved, and they've got to figure out if you've committed a crime or not. So they're going to basically check out the body to see if it's a primate, and see if primate laws or regulations of the local state that you're in have been violated. In Arizona, you better not be killing a primate without a special permit. And then, if they seize the body and they take it to a law enforcement lab, and the lab tests it, they're going to figure out whether or not it's human. If it is human, you just committed murder or manslaughter, because we don't have any definitions as to how human you have to be before you've committed murder or shot an animal. So you're up against a bucket of worms legally if you used to shoot one and bring it back. Now, if you planned the hunting trip and you went out to hunt down a Bigfoot and you shot it, then that could possibly turn into first-degree murder. Now, I don't know about you people, but I don't want to face the courts for years and years and years to defend myself. The litigation behind it is going to cost you everything. So my advice is, don't shoot a Bigfoot. Let's figure out some other way. Let's use science to provide a non-lethal method of proof. It is interesting that in a legal court of law, if you have 2 or 3 witnesses, you have footprints of the person, you've got their blood samples, you have their voice, and so forth, that generally, and have them on video or photos, generally speaking, in a court of law, that is enough to convict the person of a crime. However, it doesn't stand up in court as far as proving that Bigfoot exists. It's not good enough. So, DNA or forensic science does not require a body. DNA can be used to establish proof of existence, and the sources can be hair, flesh, blood, fecal matter, urine, skin, bone, saliva, or any part of the animal, epithelials from the skin. DNA has some drawbacks. DNA is very costly to test. The very bottom line test you could go out and have done for about $500. But then if you're going to do a full genome study, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. And basically, when you get all done, there's nothing to compare the samples to, or nothing to compare the results to. So you get basically animal species unknown. Or there's another drawback. You may get contamination. It can, it's kind of funny because there have been a lot of people submitting different samples to laboratories, and they start testing it, and they find some kind of human DNA within it. And the first thing they do is reject the test and say human contamination, or the test is inconclusive. They don't really give you the data behind it. They just write on a piece of paper, and the best you're going to get is animal species unknown. Proof. The answer is a resounding yes, there is. Not only about the 5-year DNA study that was headed by Dr. Ketchum, but before, many Bigfoot researchers have submitted samples of high probability DNA of Bigfoot, and they kept getting back the results of human contamination over and over and over again. And it's kind of hard to believe that all these guys messed up the collection and contaminated it with their own DNA. However, Dr. Ketchum did do a DNA study. They collected all of the samples that they could find, high probability samples from across the United States and Canada. They tested them out, and they found unknown primate DNA sequence, and they matched up to be about 109 high probability samples, and they all had basically the same DNA structure. It was an unknown primate. So evidently there's at least an unknown primate running around in the US and Canada. However, from these 109 high probability samples, they were able to complete 3 sets of genomes, which allows them to give us some information on Bigfoot himself. Now, Dr. Ketchum didn't do the testing herself. She was more or less the focal point for the collection of all the data. They actually went out and used 16 labs and universities, some of which were doing double-blind studies. So they wanted to make sure that there was no possibility of misinformation or tampering or something like that. So she didn't actually conduct the laboratory experiments. However, she was the focal point, and she was the one that the lead on developing the scientific paper that was submitted to various scientific journals. Because to be accepted as scientific proof, it has to be published in a scientific journal. Well, guess what? Many of those journals wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, just simply because of the relationship to Bigfoot. So what were the DNA results? Well, it was quite astounding, very surprising. There is an unidentified primate species within the United States and Canada. But this is not so unusual because on every continent in the world there are primate species besides mankind. So the US and Canada, being the only one with a primate species, would be highly irregular. Okay, the samples actually produced mitochondrial DNA, which is the mother's side of, or the female side of the DNA, and it indicated that the mother, the originating mother, was Homo sapien, or human. The nuclear DNA, which is the father's side or the male side, indicates an unknown hominin as a mate. Now this means that, well, let me back up and say that an unknown hominin is basically something like Neanderthal or possibly Devonian or early primates, or not human species. And whoever it is unknown. We have no DNA matches for it. However, we do have DNA for Neanderthal and DNA for Devonians, but we can't, the DNA taken in this nuclear DNA test did not match either one of those. So we don't know what hominin it was. So the unknown primate species that's running around in the US and Canada is a hybrid human. That is amazing. The primate species is somewhat younger than Homo sapiens species. In other words, we were around before it was. So that also brings up possible biblical references to people who it could have been, but we won't go into that now because it really doesn't matter. All that matters is that we have a hybrid species. The DNA results of the 5-year study hit the Bigfoot world, or the Bigfoot community, with mixed emotions. Some really welcomed it because it kind of confirmed of what they had been seeing in the field, what they have been observing and so forth, because they knew it had to be much more than a typical animal, much more intelligent than an elk or bear or deer or something like that, maybe even more intelligent than a chimpanzee. After all, the Bigfoot have managed to elude mankind now for eons. So that part of the house accepted the DNA as with welcome arms because it verified what they were seeing. However, there was the other side of the house that did not want to believe the DNA results and basically would not accept it. They fought it by tooth and nail. Some of the rebuttals, the DNA rebuttals that they resulted to fight this DNA study was the results were due to human contamination. Well, again, we have multiple samples. We have laboratories, 16 different laboratories and universities doing the tests. It's kind of hard to believe that all of these samples were contaminated by handlers or mishandled by the labs. DNA shows lemur genomes and other species. Well, yeah, all DNA does that. It's called junk DNA. We all have it in us because we're basically all designed on the same DNA ladder or building blocks. So, yeah, each and every one of us has junk DNA with us, but that's not complete genomes, and the genomes are what really determines what we are, whether we're a frog, a bear, or a human. So, yeah, it probably does have lemur genomes in it, and it might have some other stuff too. Um, Interesting thing is that each and every one of us Caucasians has Neanderthal DNA within us. These are complete genomes. Basically, somehow Neanderthal got integrated into our DNA system, which means that humankind did intermingle and have relations with other species. And for a long time, science believed that the Neanderthal was wiped out, that the human beings killed them all. But the DNA kind of indicates that we may have incorporated them, made them part of us, and they disappeared because they became us. The worldwide database that has everything for comparison has not accepted the DNA mapping from the 5-year study. They don't want to really have much to do with it because of the words Bigfoot, Sasquatch, and stuff like that. However, they're trying to do that. And one of the excuses they're using is that the study was not accepted by a scientific journal. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Dr. Ketchum is a doctor of veterinary medicine and not a medical doctor. What that has to do with DNA mapping and the validity of DNA testing is pretty much irrelevant. Whether you're a medicine doctor or a human doctor or a doctor of animals, it doesn't really matter. It's both the same. Very, very close to the same as far as scientific mapping and DNA testing goes. Then there was troubles with the publication of the scientific journal. Okay, they presented the scientific journal to several publishers, and of course they would have nothing to do with it. They found a journal that said yes, they would publish it, and then they reneged on the deal. They basically said, no, we're not going to publish it. And I think it was because of peer pressure. I have no proof of that or anything like that. But basically, these scientific journals, when they publish things, they're putting their reputation on the line. And then, so when they mention Bigfoot or Sasquatch, you're kind of on the outer fringes of acceptance by the rest of the scientific community, and you really don't want your laboratory with a bad reputation. So you can see how that would basically drop out, or a lab might drop out, or a journal might drop out and not accept or publish. So what they did was they bought the journal and published anyway. So now the scientific community is saying, well, the journal is owned by a conflicting interest party, and therefore it's not considered to be a valid scientific journal or evaluation on the DNA testing. So those are the rebuttals that they've been hitting up with. Since we can't even count on science to prove the existence for DNA, or a single source of science, we have to be able to look at other sciences or use other sciences to prove the existence of Bigfoot, and to be able to study them and determine their social nature, their longevity, their birth rates, and all that kind of stuff. So what other sciences are used in cryptozoology? Well, we of course have to understand biology, botany, anthropology, forensics, zoology, and many, many more sciences. One of the main tools that we use in cryptozoology, and is a must, is biology. Biology is a natural science concerned with the study of life and living organisms, including their structure, their function, their growth, their evolution, distribution, and taxonomy. So basically, it's the study of animals and plants and so forth, and gives us a structure to work from. It helps us understand that there's not going to be something with a rhinoceros head, a human body, and goat feet. So that's one of the reasons why biology is important to us. So biology kind of helps us understand animals and plants a little better. It tells us, can such an animal exist? Not does it exist, but could it exist? What kind and how much do they eat? Whether it's omnivorous or meat eaters or plant eaters or whatever. What type of habitat this type of animal would live in. The longevity, the birth rate, the growth rate, including social structures and behaviors, and even species relationships. What animals do they get along with? This is all important information to be able to form theories from our cryptids, because our cryptids are not going to cooperate. They're not going to let us sit and watch them, and therefore we have to get the information any way we can. Biology is very important to us because it's the study of plant life and basically what kind of plants and where they grow. It's a branch of biology, but it really helps us out to help define more of our cryptid. We can find out if it has any special dietary needs, whether it's meat eaters, plant eaters, or both. And this we can find out by studying the contents of the cryptid scat. It also helps us to know a little bit more about our cryptid that we're studying, because we might know the locations of such plant life. It might grow only on the north side of hills above 7,000 feet. So that kind of gives us an idea of where our cryptid has been and where it goes to get that particular type of food. We also know that the favorite plants can point out the way to the cryptid. Now we know animals have preferences, such as the koala bear only eats eucalyptus trees. So you go find koala bear, if you go search for them, you go look for eucalyptus trees. And that's the way you do it. Bears eat salmon at a certain time of year during the bear season, or during salmon run season. So therefore, if you want to really see bears, you go to a river that has a salmon run and watch for bears. It kind of really helps us out a little bit. It also gives us a little bit of information about nutrition factors and how big our cryptid could get by eating such plants and so forth, how much they would have to eat, and things like that. So why do we need anthropology while doing cryptozoology? Well, anthropology is the study of humankind, past and present, that draws and builds upon the knowledge from social sciences and biological sciences, as well as the humanities and the natural sciences. So if you're going to study a cryptid that resembles man, or could possibly be a species of man, or a primate, you might want to study anthropology. That might give you reasons as to why they do certain things. I wrote several articles about why Bigfoot does what Bigfoot does. Such things as building structures that seem not to provide any type of shelter from the rain or the wind or the sun. Basically, they're just structures. Typical case are there some type of lean-to or teepee. Why does Bigfoot have enmity towards man? In other words, why do they hide from us? What do they have against us? Does Bigfoot have rituals? And I'm not talking just, things like religion or something like that. I mean, do they have rituals where maybe they kill an animal and remove its head and bury it in reverence to the animal that just gave its life so that they could eat? That kind of thing. So we kind of can get an idea as to why they do what they do by studying mankind. So through anthropology, we get to study, are they like mankind? How do they relate to us? How does Bigfoot why do they avoid man? Does Bigfoot have social structures? Are they alpha male or alpha female, pack oriented? Just what do they do? Do they have rituals? Why does Bigfoot make non-shelter structures? And I've mentioned these before. And why does Sasquatch remove the heads of animals? Yes, basically they have a very valid method of producing or processing the animals that they kill, such as deer and elk. They basically skin the animal. The first to go is the heart and the liver. The head is removed, and I don't know where the head goes to, but it disappears. Might get buried. But after that, the hide is pulled over the body down to the hind hooves. Then the meat is systematically removed and the skeleton is left intact. If you get there early enough without the other coyotes or other little munchers get there, you'll find an intact skeleton, and the bones won't be strewn all over. Now with a turkey kill, they have a tendency to arrange the feathers, the larger feathers in one area and smaller ones in other areas, and so forth. So it's kind of interesting to study this kind of thing and see what's related to man. Now with our Native Americans, many of them have a ritual that they go through. When they kill an animal for food, they thank the animal for giving its life so that they might be able to eat. And I have seen many hunters do that. I've also watched many hunters with a little ritual of either drinking the blood or eating the liver, something like that, from a freshly killed animal. I wouldn't suggest doing that, but that is a ritual that is out there in mankind. Now we've talked a little bit about forensics and the usefulness in cryptozoology studies, but going back to, do we need a body? If you've noticed, I have been including on the right side of the screen different photos of what we believe to be Bigfoot in our study areas. These have been captured by cameras and video and so forth. It's really interesting because take this picture here. If you had her in your crosshairs, would you pull the trigger? I could not. These are just too human-like. And this is some of the things that I've been finding in my studies, is there seems to be subspecies within the Bigfoot species. There are those that look very human-like, but they're hairy and they're tall. And then there are those that look very primitive, and they're hairy and tall and very bulky and big. So this could be a reversion of the genetics or the genes manifesting itself from time to time within the Bigfoot species, to where, yeah, you get more human-looking people, and sometimes you get very rugged and primitive-looking Bigfoots. So my deal is I would not be able to pull the trigger. and I would encourage nobody else to do so. Forensics is a scientific study or method of gathering and examining information of the past, such as footprints, blood, epithelials, different kinds of stuff like that. Forensics is done in relation to criminal law, but it's also used to carry out in other fields too, such as astronomy, archaeology, biology, geology, and is also used to investigate fossils and bones and so forth from ancient times. So forensics is very important to what we do. So it's a good idea to study forensics so that you know how to collect your samples, how to keep them from being contaminated so that your DNA testing won't come back falsely. Okay. Some of the things that forensics helps us with is for instance, when we find a footprint, is that footprint man, human, or is it Bigfoot? Or is it a bear overstep where the hind foot goes where the front foot was and creates a large, long foot? It also helps us determine the scat. Is it bear, human, Bigfoot, elk, whatever? Is the hair that you find on the barbed wire fence or hung on a tree, is that elk, bear, or Bigfoot, or some other animal? Does Bigfoot leave fingerprints? Yes, Bigfoot does have fingerprints, but they're quite different than ours. Ours consist of swirls, loops, waves, and circles, and all humans have that. Their dermal ridges or fingerprints basically go straight across the print. So it is quite different. Is that toenail that you found on a rock, is that human or Bigfoot? And yes, this has happened. In Seligman, Arizona, a rancher was in his cabin one night and he heard some terrible screams. He went to investigate, and on the rock, he found some blood and a toenail, and it had some tissue on it and so forth. So he carefully bagged it and brought it in, and that became part of the Dr. Ketchum 5-year study, DNA study. And of course, they did use the toenail, and they extracted, or they used all of the tissue off of the toenail. The toenail doesn't really give too much DNA results from the nail itself, but the tissue is very viable and workable. And that's one thing I want to bring up about DNA testing too, is DNA testing is a destructive test. If you submit a sample to have it tested, and they use it you don't get it back. It's gone. So all you get is some paperwork back saying what it was or what it isn't. So if you want to prize your hair and stuff like that, I suggest you find a better way to determine whether it's high probability Bigfoot. A hair can be identified through all the hair databases and the use of a microscope. So, and it's a lot cheaper to do that than it is to go to your local DNA store and get $500 to start with and be ready to open your wallet lots of times, because it could get very expensive after that. Zoology is also a very important branch of science that's used in cryptozoology. We rely on it very heavily. It is the branch of biology that relates to the animal kingdom, including the structure, the embryology, the evolution, the classification of the animals, the habits, the distribution of animals, both living and extinct. So it's really very important to know your animals. It's also very important to know what those animals sound like. So it's very useful to collect animal sounds so that you can use them as reference, because sometimes you may record something that just doesn't sound right. So biology is very useful within cryptozoology. Zoology does things for us like help us identify, is Bigfoot an ape? Is he a human? Is he something else? Is he a mutant polar bear? So zoology is something that we need to know. We need to know your animals in the local area. Who is Bigfoot related to? Is he primate? Is he human? What? Can we anticipate behaviors from like animals? Well, usually like animals behave very similar. There are some exceptions and so forth, but you know, birds fly and sometimes they fish and so forth. So can we anticipate the behavior of Bigfoot from like animals? Educated guesses about social structures. Well, we can look at the animals that are much like a Bigfoot, and we can take an educated guess as to how they would operate. Is a gorilla clan, is that basically alpha male oriented, alpha female oriented? Is it like a wolf pack that uses pack mentality or pack thought? Just exactly what do we know about them? How much would they possibly eat? Okay, we know that gorillas eat a lot because they mostly eat vegetation. So we can make that comparison. We are kind of starting to get a glimpse that Bigfoot is more than likely omnivorous, which means he eats meat and plants, and therefore would not have to spend so much time chewing grass. So he might have a little bit more time for rituals, hunting, building structures, and that sort of thing. This photo here is of one of the primitive looking type Bigfoots, and it's a very good example of what most people believe Bigfoot to look like. This is a profile shot. You'll notice that he has you know, the typical human-like features somewhat. He has got a kind of a broad flattened nose and a very heavy eyebrow or brow level. He has a cone-shaped head and is very bulky and very muscular. If you study the shot, you can see this is the big guy. So now we're going to kind of test you on what you've learned about cryptozoology and the use of other sciences. This is a picture of a footprint that we obtained on the Mogollon Rim. It's 19 inches long and 6 inches across. Many people tell us that this is a bear overstep, that the bear basically the heel is where the front foot was, and the toes and stuff is where the hind paw stepped, leaving what appears to be a larger, longer footprint. However, if you know what sciences to use, you can deduce what it really is. Possible answers of the sciences used to examine the footprint would be biology. You know, we know that it's an animal of some sort. Zoology, because of the shape of the foot and so forth. Bear type footprints, basically the center toe is the lead toe. We know that human biology, the lead toe is usually the big toe or the inside toe. Forensics, you know, we basically had to cast the footprint and save it and bring it back and examine it and look for hairs and so forth. So The possible answers: biology, zoology, forensics, and human biology. Guess the sciences involved in these photos. Well, the top photos are basically a hunting blind. We believe it was used to be hunting elk and deer. It's kind of interesting because right in front of this blind, trees and stuff were organized to create kind of a funnel to basically funnel animals down right past this hole. So it would make it very easy for a large creature such as a Bigfoot to be able to ambush the animals. Now the bottom one, the bottom photos are of an actual nest. Now a lot of people believe these are debris huts that are made by humans and so forth. But, you know, you kind of gotta look at, okay, the location, who would be up there doing it, you know, is it a possibility that it could be Bigfoot created? And some of the arguments might be that the hole is not big enough for an adult Bigfoot. But when I tell you what was inside the nest, then you'll understand a little bit more. It was a creature that stood about 3 to 4 feet tall, all black, very human looking. I was nose to nose with it, and again, I am a non-kill, no-harm person. So I backed out of there. I put cameras on the nest and waited to see what came out or if Mom would come in. I trusted my cameras to do the job, but when I returned, every one of my cameras was on the ground, in the dirt, or facing in the sky, or looking into the bushes. I was only able to get one photo, and that was a big hairy arm and chest. Some of the possible sciences used in those structures and nests is zoology. What kind of animals would build something like that? Biology. Do they need it for warmth, shelter, whatever? Forensics. What exactly did it? Human? Bigfoot? Bears? Kangaroos? Don't know. Oh, and then you got to look at anthropology. You know, does man just do stuff like that? One thing I might make notice is the photo to the right is a picture of a pine needle doll. It's made and was found close to the nest, the pine needle nest. And if you'll notice, it seems to have hair at the top of the head, made out of pine needles. It's tied in the middle of the waistband, and it's tied such that the pine needles that stick out from the waistband look like arms. And then, of course, the bottom part was legs. Interesting thing is right underneath that in the background on the ground is 1, 2, 3 other pine needle dolls. Kind of indicates that there might have been youth involved in this. Here's another one. Guess what sciences would be used in this? What we have are bones and a hair. Here are the possible answers. Forensics. Well, you know, we're probably going to want to have those bones and that hair tested and to determine where they came from or what creature they came from. So, you know, you can either do it through DNA studies, or with the hair you might be able to use a microscope and compare it to the hair databases that are out there to be able to determine basically what the animal might be. Now with Bigfoot, it might turn out that you can find no matches, but at least you'll be able to say it's not a bear, it's not a moose, and it's not human. Biology, basically we kind of look at what kind of animal could this possibly be, and zoology kind of matches right in with that, because The size of the bones tells us that it's not human. It's probably some kind of quadruped, or it could be Bigfoot. Now, this brings up an interesting point with the bones. One of the things that skeptics always say is, if Bigfoot exists, why have we found no fossil records and no bones? Well, maybe we have. How many people go out and hiking or hunting or something like that, and they come upon some bones, some bleached bones laying on the ground? How many people stop and look at those bones to try to determine what kind of animal they are? There might be a few, but most people will walk by and go, ew. Some people might pick up a stick and turn them over and stuff like that. But if there's no skull and it's not evident as to what kind of an animal it is, more than likely they'll just think, oh, well, it's a cow or a horse or something like that, and walk right on by. So basically we could have possibly walked by several bones of a Bigfoot. And then there's always the thing that bodies and bones and stuff do not last very long in the forest. Studies have shown that the body can completely disappear in just a matter of a couple of weeks, and the bones get strewn all over, and therefore we think that they're some kind of other animal bones. Most people will not bag and tag bones to take back and spend $500 to find out that it's an unknown species. Then there's the possibility that Bigfoot could possibly eat their own. Cannibalism. They may eat their dead, or they might even bury their dead, which goes back into rituals and maybe even some religion, which could possibly give you an idea of just how intelligent Bigfoot might be. Okay, we're going to do one more Guess the Science. These are actual pictures of things that we have found on the Mogollon Rim. The first upper left picture is a mud print of a hand. The next one is a hand that's messing with one of my game cameras. The lower left hand corner is a foot measuring about 17 inches in the snow in the middle of nowhere, and guess what, you can count the toes. And then that last one is me taking scat samples. We found some scat samples, and I used to have like 7 or 8 bags of scat in my Ziploc bags in the freezer, but my wife decided that that was not going to happen anymore, so I had to identify that scat or get rid of it. I did have that particular sample analyzed, and that came back to be a known animal. So, what kind of sciences are used in identifying these? Some of the possible answers would be biology, zoology, forensics, and botany. Botany because, I was playing with the poo, seeing what the animal ate, and comparing that consistency and so forth, even the chewing and processing of the materials to figure out if it was a bear or some other kind of creature. Might say that the poo was very finely processed, which means it was chewed very well, which indicates that it's probably not a bear, because bears don't really chew. They don't have that many molars, and they basically bite and rip and swallow. And it's too big to be a lion. So it was either a human or maybe a Bigfoot. Definitely was not elk and so forth. The other photos, the hands, I was accused of the picture of the hand being my own hand, and if you've seen my hand, my fingers are very short and stubby, and that's not my hand. They said that, well, it's an optical illusion because I jerked my hand away from the camera, and that's the way it turned out. And no, that's not the way it was. The camera was secure on the tree. I didn't do that. And I have proof of that because about 6 miles away and about a month later, I found the handprint in the mud. Very long fingers, much like an orangutan's hand. And you can see where the hair at the wrist line actually collected up some of the mud and took it with it. So basically the mud print verifies the camera and vice versa. So we know that it's probably not human because the handprint in the mud measured from the heel of the palm to the tip of the center finger there 11.5 inches. Well, that's enough guessing of the sciences. Now we want to talk about other cryptids of Arizona, of which are all a part of cryptozoology. And so this is just a few of them here in Arizona. And the upper left-hand corner is looks like a giant pterodactyl or something like that with these cowboys standing around it. That actually happened. That was in the late 1800s. The cowboys out on the range saw this big humongous bird type thing, and they shot it, and it flew off, and so they chased it on horseback, and every time it landed, they shot it again. They eventually killed it. They brought it back to Tombstone and hung it on the Tombstone epitaph wall, and you could get your photo taken with it for a small fee. I think it was about a nickel or 25 cents. So that actually happened. The next one, the top right hand side, that looks like some type of plesiosaur. That's known as skinfin. It's in Lake Powell. They actually retrieved a carcass back in the late 1950s. It was sent to the Smithsonian Institute, and then the carcass disappeared. The animal in the lower right is also, well, it's actually an X-cryptid. It's known as a javelina. And before 1938, there were no javelinas in Arizona. These migrated into Arizona and are considered to be an animal out of place. They came to Arizona from South America, and they liked it here. They've been thriving ever since. The lower right-hand corner is Mothman. You see this guy over in New Jersey quite a bit, but we have Mothman here in Arizona, or at least a type of it. The Indians up in the Four Corners area actually build kitchenas and speak of this type of a creature, and they have legends and lore about him. And people have spotted it over in the area between Springerville, St. John's, and Cholo. So that's a cryptid that needs to be researched. There's many more, such as the Texas type Chupacabra and the Puerto Rico or South American type Chupacabra, and some other animals like that. Well, this actually brings us to the end of our presentation. And since if you're listening to the audio and if this is on the internet, you can send your questions to me at the address below at the Chief Monster Chaser address at mogollonmonster.com. Or you can go to Twitter and follow me at MitchWaite.5. YouTube is Susan Farnes. Examiner.com. I write for them, and I write many articles on cryptozoology and Bigfoot. And I also have many books and DVDs available on Amazon.com. These are some examples of the products or work that I have accomplished. I do everything from Bigfoot, the Mogollon Monster, which is Arizona's Bigfoot, and Bigfoot DVDs and so forth. You can find them on Amazon.com under Mitch Waite. I do all of the